Chapters 38 and 39 of An American Robinson Crusoe. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. This reading by Allison Hester of Athens, Georgia. An American Robinson Crusoe by Samuel B. Allison. Chapter 38. Another Shipwreck. One evening Robinson sat in his shelter thinking of his plans to escape to Friday's country. He was sad, for after all this place was very dear to him. It was the only home he had. Had he not made everything with his own hands? It was doubly dear to him on this account. He thought how it would grieve him to leave his goats, his fields, and the many comforts he had here. He had been telling Friday of his home in New York. He told him of the great city and of its many wonderful sights. He told him of his country and his people, of his flag and its history. All these things brought back memories of his boyhood, and he wondered what changes had come in his long absence. Friday, with wonderful intelligence, listened to all Robinson told him. He was delighted in hearing Robinson tell of the wonders of the great world, for he had never known anything about it. As they talked, Robinson noticed the approach of a storm. The sky was getting black with clouds. The winds were blowing a hurricane. The waves were coming in mountain high. It reminded him of the eventful night, now 25 years ago, when his ship was tossed up on the shore like an eggshell and broken to pieces. Suddenly there was a sound that made Robinson start from his seat with the wildest alarm. Was it the sound of a cannon from the ocean, or the terrible crash and roar of the water on the rocks of the coast? There it is again. It is a cannon. Some ship is in distress. This is its signal. Robinson ran out and down to the shore with Friday at his heels. "Oh, master," said Friday, "can we not help? If they only knew the island was here, and how to steer into the harbor beyond the point of land on the south." Robinson was so excited that he scarcely knew what he was doing. He ran up and down the shore calling wildly, but the awful roar of the sea and wind drowned his cries. Suddenly his thoughts came back to him. "Quick, Friday, get some fire into a pot. We will run to the point, gather grass and wood, and make a fire there. Maybe we can guide them into the harbor." They soon had a great beacon light sending its welcome greeting far over the sea. The pilot of the ship saw it and steered his ship nearer and nearer. Robinson was ready to shout for joy as the ship seemed about to make the harbor. The ship had her sails torn in shreds and her rudder broken. It was hard to steer her in such a gale. On rounding the point she was blown on the rocks. With a frightful crash, which could be heard above the din of the storm, she struck and held fast. Robinson could hear the cries of the men and the orders of the officers. They were trying to get boats ready to be put off, but such was the confusion of the storm and the enormous waves breaking over the deck that it could not be done quickly. Before the men could get a boat into the sea and get into it, the ship gave a lurch to one side, as though about to sink. All the men jumped for one boat. It was overburdened. The wind tossed it about. The sea soon filled it and went down, and all were lost. Robinson and Friday remained on the shore all night. They watched to see if they could not help some poor sailor that might cling to a plank and be blown on shore. They saw no one. At last they lay down, but they could not sleep. Many times they sprang up and ran about for fear that some poor fellow would need their help. At last morning came. The storm ceased. Robinson and Friday searched everywhere for the bodies of sailors, but could find none. But the wind had blown the ship in plain view and into shallow waters. It was lying on the bottom with more than half its bulk out of the water. The masts were gone. It was a sad sight. No human being could be seen on it. They were now rejoiced that they had their boat ready. "Let us take it," said Robinson, "and go out to the ship. It may be some person is still on the unfortunate ship." They were soon by the ship's side. They rowed around it until they saw a rope hanging down from the deck. Robinson seized this and clambered up. Friday tied the boat fast and followed. Robinson opened the door leading from the deck into the ship and went down. He searched in all the cabins and knocked at all the doors. He called, but all was still. When he was satisfied that every person on board had been drowned, he wept bitterly. Friday stood there with open and staring eyes. He looked and looked. He was astonished at the large ship and at the wonderful things before him. They were in the cabin where the passengers had been. There stood trunks under the benches and clothes hung on the hooks on the wall. One trunk was open. In it were telescopes through which the travelers had looked at the land. Robinson also saw paper, pens, pen holders, and ink. Books were also nearby. Robinson first took a thick book. It was the Bible, out of which his mother had so often taught him. Then they came to the sailors' cabin. There hung muskets and swords and bags of shot and cartridges. Then they went to the workroom. There were saws, hammers, spades, shovels, chisels, nails, bottles and pails, knives and forks, and something more, over which Robinson was most glad, matches. At last they came into the storeroom. There lay bags of flour and barley, teas, lentils, beans, and sugar. Then Robinson embraced Friday in his great joy and said to him, "How rich we are!" Chapter 38. Another shipwreck. Chapter 39. Saving things from the ship. After Robinson had looked through the ship, he began to plan the way to get the tools and things he most wanted on shore. He and Friday first carried everything together that he wanted to take on shore. When they had done this, he found he had the following things. Robinson stood everything together that he needed the most. 1. A case of nails and screws. 2. 2 iron axes and several hatchets. 3. A saw. 4. A small case of planes, tongs, augers, files, chisels, etc. 5. A third case with iron brackets, hooks, hinges, etc. 6. A case of matches. 7. A barrel of gunpowder. 8. 2 muskets and a pistol. 9. Several swords. 10. A bag of cartridges. 11. A large sail cloth and some rope. 12. A telescope. By means of the ship's ropes, Robinson let everything down into his boat. He himself took the Bible, and then they rowed to the shore and unloaded the boat. Everything was put into the bower where rain could not harm it. By the time they had this done, night was coming on, and they decided to do no more that day, but wait until the next day. "We must work fast," said Robinson. "The first storm is likely to break the ship in pieces and destroy everything in it." The next morning early they ate a hastily prepared breakfast and were off to the boat. Neither Robinson nor Friday stopped for their noonday lunch. "A storm is brewing," said Robinson. "The air is calm, the sky is overcast with clouds, and the heat is oppressive. We must hurry." With the utmost diligence they rowed back and forth all day. They made 9 trips. They had now on shore a surprising quantity of all kinds of tools, goods, and weapons. They had all kinds of ware to use in the kitchen, clothes, and food. Robinson prized a little 4-wheeled wagon and a whetstone. But in looking over his stores, Robinson suddenly discovered that he had no needles or thread. They went at once to procure these important articles. In looking for needles and thread, Robinson found a small trunk full of money and valuable stones. There were diamonds, rubies, pearls, and much gold. Robinson pushed it to one side. "What can I do with riches on this island? I would give them all for some needles and thread," he said to Friday. But on second thought he took the trunk and its contents along with him to his cave. For in the trunk were also letters and writings. "Perhaps," he said, "these tell to whom the valuables belong, and I can return them some time." Robinson at last found a case containing everything one could need